Welcome back, everyone. As we move into the new year, I wanted to take a look at Nehemiah. And see, Nehemiah isn't a story of a call to suffering or begrudged submission. It's, if we pay attention to the details, actually a story of a preferred life. Let's take a look at scripture. Starting in Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 3, Nehemiah receives a report from his brother, saying, "Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire." Nehemiah then says, "When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven." Nehemiah continues the prayer by showing reverence and then calling on the promise God had made to Moses, being scattered and then gathered time and time again. He then finishes his prayer with verse 11. "Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this, your servant, and to the prayer of the servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man. I was cupbearer to the king." Now we move to chapter 2, verse 4, where we see what the desires of Nehemiah's heart really are. "The king said to me, 'What is it you want?' Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, 'If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried, so that I can rebuild it.'" What's important to note about these scriptures is that Nehemiah hasn't been commanded to do this, and he's not begrudgingly asking God to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. He's doing it of his own free will. Out of the desires of his heart, Nehemiah is praying to God and pleading with the king to send him to rebuild. Oftentimes, we can look at Nehemiah's story as one of faithfulness because of how boring building a wall can sound, or as one of crucifying his flesh because of the adversity that he faced. When the reality of the situation is, Nehemiah desired to take on this task. He wanted to see Jerusalem's wall be rebuilt. And most of all, he wanted his people to return to God, which they ultimately do. This was Nehemiah's preferred life. And while everything God calls us to do may not be something we want to do, we have to remember that he's still both our Father and Creator. He created us on purpose for a purpose that our heart will carry out of its own free will so long as we remain in his presence. What father wouldn't be delighted to see their child do what they love? It was God's faithfulness to the desires of Nehemiah's heart that ultimately paved a way for Nehemiah to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and shepherd the people back to God. Without question, God desires to do the same in each of his children, to take their desires and see them filled for his glory and for the glory of his kingdom. And God is always with us in each small moment, developing our character, developing our skills, developing our talents to move us closer to our preferred life, which is ultimately designed to bring him glory and to restore his children. So take heart for the plans for your future and let God work in each small step. When Christ fills us with his Spirit, the desires for our future often become aligned with the path that he has already carved out for us. Well, thank you again for taking a quick look at Nehemiah with me, and I hope that serves as a bit of encouragement going into the new year. I pray that everyone be blessed, and I'll see y'all again real soon.